It is officially the start of October, and like a lot of other YouTubers, I decided to get into the theme of the month and talk about some Halloween and horror themed movies and content here on my channel. And that's exactly what we're gonna do here today with my first Halloween spooky movie horror theme kind of video. And today we're gonna talk about my love of these big box horror movie collections that I own and why I really enjoy these type of movie collections. And even though they may not be the greatest quality, that kind of adds to the charm to me. And so yeah, let's talk about some horror movie content and let's talk about these big box collections of horror movies that I have here in my home theater. Big box movie collections of horror movies, but also other genres, are just not as prevalent nowadays in 2025 as they were 10, 15, 20 years ago. And that is part of the appeal to me for owning some of these collections, is that they're sort of a remnant of their time. They're a remnant of a time period 10, 15, 20 years ago when a lot of low budget horror movies or low budget kind of public domain creature features and sci-fi movies and different things like that were just kind of mass produced and thrown into big bundles together to sell for like dirt cheap prices, just because they were pretty much almost like public IP or no one really cared about them. And so they were just kind of thrown together in these big kind of big box setups, you know. And like I said, that's for horror movies, but it also goes for like sci-fi, drama, older, like what they call drive-in movies from like the 50s and 60s. But here today, I want to talk about the big box horror movie collections that I own here in my kind of home theater, because I really do like having these for what they are. And that is a kind of peek into low budget filmmaking in a lot of cases. I mean, there's some more higher budget stuff in these collections, but a lot of it is low budget filmmaking. A lot of it is kind of obscure stuff or public domain stuff that isn't really prevalent, like I said, in modern kind of culture, you know, here, that you don't really see all that often. And some of it is just maybe forgotten stuff that was just kind of made and then just kind of lost to time. And since they don't make collections like this all that much anymore, these are really some of the only ways you can find them, or maybe you can find them on the public internet database or some royalty-free kind of databases online. Now, I want to say I bought all of these used. I did not buy any of these brand new because they very rarely are available brand new nowadays. I mean, I guess you could find a sealed one of these floating around somewhere, but I bought all of them used, and I bought all of these, save for, I believe, one from a thrift store. There's one in my collection here I bought from the Record Exchange, but everything else I just purchased over the years from thrift stores. So I've spent, I think the most I've ever spent on one of these is $3, and that is the one that I got at the Record Exchange. And that's kind of for good reason, because as we get into some of this stuff, I will tell you that a lot of these collections, the quality is not very good, and in some instances, it's downright like horrendous, the quality that you get on these. But similar to when I talked about the original Alien film and just some other stuff that I've had here on my channel, that kind of adds to the charm to me. The fact that these are kind of dirty, gritty, lo-fi, low quality horror movies, you know, in just, you know, really bad formatting and stuff. And it just kind of adds to the appeal to watch some of this stuff. Now, one thing I will mention as we get into my collection of this sort of stuff, you will see some crossover between some of these collections, especially on public domain or royalty-free, low-budget kind of movies. They tend to like cross over quite a bit on some of these collections because they were made by different companies or at different time periods. So when you see kind of the film listing on each one of these cases, you're probably going to see some crossover. And I didn't do that intentionally to have multiple copies of, say, some of these films. It's just kind of the way it works with some of this stuff. And on another side note, as we go through all this stuff, definitely leave a comment down below if you are a horror movie fan, especially low budget, old school kind of stuff like this, and let me know some of your favorites off the list that's on here, or maybe some stuff that isn't included that I should kind of check out and find, you know, if I can see them somewhere. So yeah, with all that out the way, let's actually get into the collection. So starting off first, we have this. This is the Horror Do Not Watch Alone 20 film collection. Right here, this was produced in 2009, so this is one of the later releases for stuff like this, and this contains 4 discs on here. The big one on this collection here, when you look through everything, is probably Night of the Living Dead, you know, because that is one of the big horror movies that kind of started the whole zombie genre in American cinema. And this has a very low-res version of Night of the Living Dead. Now, I do actually have Night of the Living Dead, the Criterion collection release in my actual collection over there. That is probably the more preferred way to watch that movie if you're wanting pure like quality on there. But in terms of kind of the lo-fi, low-budget kind of aesthetic that you would get, this set here has that. But it does have Night of the Living Dead. It also has the original House on Haunted Hill with Vincent Price. That's a pretty decent one for what it is. Dementia 13. It has a Dracula and his Vampire Brides with Christopher Lee on here. You know, so it's got, you know, a bunch of different movies like that, B movies and low budget stuff. So this is the first one. And again, I got all of these from thrift stores, more or less, except for one that I'll talk about here at the end. But everything here I paid like $1 or $2 for, and sometimes even less than $1. And I'll open this up. Here's what the discs kind of look like. And as I said, I'll put B-roll footage in on most of this stuff so that people can see it. Hello, Obi. There's Obi here as well. He's sitting next to me. Moving on, we're on to the next set here. This is Attack of the Monsters. This is the origin of classic monster movies. This is a 10-movie set here in this collection. This is produced by Brentwood Home Video, and this was produced in 2003, probably around the more golden era of these kind of like box sets. And this one here has a lot of crossover with some of the other collections I have in my actual collection here. But this has like the Giant Gila Monster, Attack of the Giant Leeches. I think that the Attack of the Giant Leeches I have on like 3 different sets here. Attack of the Killer Shrews, Creature from the Haunted Sea. Like, this has quite a few monster movies, you know, B-movie monster movies, or even maybe C-level monster movies. And this is going to be a theme on a lot of these discs that you're going to see here. They're double-sided, just plain DVDs. With no artwork, nothing fancy, just like plain DVDs, with usually 1 or 2 films on each side of the disc, depending on how many discs are actually in the collection. But like I said, this is from early 2000s, 2003, kind of like the prime time for these big budget collections of when a lot of these films were going into public domain or whatever. And this one's not too bad in terms of what it has here. Again, another collection that I picked up for like $1 or so at a thrift store over the years. So, yep, here's this one. Let's move on to the next in my collection. So moving on to the next collection, we are going to look at a Gorehouse Greats collection with 12 classic films on here. And this is a 3-disc set, even though it is in a 4-disc container. That's how I got it. But this one is from Millhouse Creek. They did a lot of these back in the day, of these collections, not just of horror movies, but other like sci-fi and different genre kind of collections. And this is from 2009. So again, towards kind of like the later time period for stuff like this. And this one has a little bit different films on it that really doesn't have a lot of crossover with the other ones. These ones here, in my opinion, are a little bit more of the more modern B-movie, C-movie, kind of low-budget filmmaking. Some of the ones on here that I do like, even though admittedly they're not the greatest thing in the world. I mean, I'm going to be the first to tell you that. But like Brain Twisters is kind of a funny horror movie that's from 1991. That one's not too bad. This also has Trip with Teacher from 1975, and that is another film that's actually, I think, on like 3 different collections that I have here in my setup. Not necessarily the horror movie ones, but I have some drive-in cult classic big box collections like this, and I think that one is on both of those as well. But it also has like Blood Mania, Primeval, Nightmare in Wax, The Devil's Hand. This has 12 just different movies, but out of the ones on here, I think Brain Twisters is one of my more kind of like favorite ones, because it is at least kind of like funny and everything. And this one I got from a thrift store, and you might be able to tell, you might not in this picture, but you'll see B-roll. These discs in this set are really beat up. These are really scratched up, and sometimes these don't even play that well. I have to clean them off before I play them, but this is a fun little set as well from Mill Creek Entertainment. And probably not my favorite set that's in here, but a pretty decent one with some other stuff that doesn't have a lot of crossover with other collections. So yeah, that is this set here, the Gorehouse Greats collection that I have. Let's move on to the next collection in my set. So now we're getting into collections here that don't have all their discs in the setup. I'm actually missing some discs on these that I'm going to talk about, and that's because I got these at the local Catholic Charities thrift store here in my town, and they were all kind of like jumbled together in a box, and all the discs were kind of everywhere, so there is a couple like discs and movies that are missing out of some of these. And one of these boxes, not this one, but the next one I'm going to talk about, are basically random discs thrown together. I don't even know if the films on the cover are on the actual discs that I have in that one, but we're going to go with this one next. This is a 15 film horror cult classic setup, and this is from Echo Bridge Home Entertainment. This is actually from 2012, which may actually be the latest, the newest version out of any of these that I have here. And this is another one that has some crossover with some of the other films on here. So this also has the original Night of the Living Dead on here. You'll also see this originally came from Goodwill before I bought it, so the sticker is over kind of the back here. But this has the original Night of the Living Dead on here again. That covers a couple different sets that I have. House on Haunted Hill is on here again. This has the original Piranha movie from Roger Corman, which I actually have in its own special edition in my collection as well, so I don't really watch it on here, but I have that. This has White Zombie, which is Rob Zombie and his original band White Zombie. It's kind of based off of that film that's on here. Carnival of Souls, Silent Night, Bloody Night, Satanic Rites of Dracula, The Terror with Jack Nicholson, which also is on another one of the sets that I have here. All kinds of stuff. So yeah, this one is not too bad. You know, it's okay for what it is. You will see on here, this has like 6 movies or 5 movies, whatever, on each disc. So they are not encoded super high quality, but because it is a little bit newer formatting from 2012, these aren't as bad as some of the other releases I have here in terms of quality. But still, for what it is, you know, for me spending like $1 on this, definitely not bad. And like I said, there's a couple things that are kind of crossing over on this one as well. So that's the next one that I have here in my collection. Let's move on now to the one that really is kind of a hodgepodge that doesn't, I don't even know if it has all of these kind of like movies in here. And as you might be able to see, I actually have 2 different cover arts kind of pushed in here because it's kind of mixing everything over. So originally this was a 10 horror movie big box collection from Echo Bridge Entertainment from 2014. So actually, I guess this one's even a little bit newer than the other one I just talked about. This one I originally wanted because it had Prom Night on there, which is something I'd like to see with Jamie Lee Curtis because I've never actually seen that movie. However, the disc that has Prom Night on it is not in here. So it has the second disc from this set and then another random Echo Bridge kind of like disc in here as well. But the films that I do have, so I have Meadowwoods, Howling 4, The Nurse, The Familiar, and Killer Killer on the 2014 Echo Bridge disc. That would be for this cover art. And then there's a 2013 Echo Bridge disc here that has Pelt, Dogman, The Eyes, and Monster in the Woods. And I can say that I think it's like Pelt or Dogman. I've watched a little bit of that. That one's pretty bad. That's a more modern horror movie, but it's pretty bad. It doesn't have the charm of some of these older movies. Yeah, so that is this one in the collection. Now let's move on to probably my 2 favorite collections out of these that I have here in my home theater. And we're gonna start with this one. This is an 8-movie horror collection pack from Lionsgate. And this doesn't have a year on it. I can't find a year on here, so I don't know when this is actually from. I may have to do a little Google research of the cover and then maybe throw it in here at the bottom. But this one is probably my favorite in terms of content, the actual films that are on this set. And I haven't watched every one of these, but I've watched almost every one that is on this disc. And these are probably, like I said, my favorite. This has Waxworks, Chud 2, 976 Evil 2, Chopping Mall, Slaughter High, Ghoulies 3, The Unholy, and Class of 1999 on this set here. And these are, like I said, probably my favorite films for this collection and for what I have here. Now, I really enjoy probably Chopping Mall is probably one of my favorite films out of this set, even though the title doesn't really make much sense when you actually watch the movie. It doesn't really make any sense for what's on there. It makes it seem like it's a kind of like a Jason Voorhees ripoff kind of movie, you know, slasher film, and it's not like that. It really has to deal with robots. So I don't know why it's called Chopping Mall. I guess it's just a play on the pun, you know, of shopping mall there. But that one's pretty good. The other one that I enjoy is Slaughter High. This is the unrated, uncut version of Slaughter High on here. It's a neat film for what it is, but you can definitely tell they were padding that movie to make the like 90 minutes or whatever that they have on the actual running time, because there's a big, long, prolonged like chase stalker sequence at the end of the movie that runs for like 15 minutes or whatever that is really boring. But other than that, that one's kind of interesting as well. And like I said, all of the movies that are on here are probably my favorite in terms of content for these sets. Chud 2 is also kind of funny. It's more of like a horror comedy kind of movie. So that one's pretty funny too. Now there is also Ghoulies 3 on this collection, which I don't really watch it on this set because I have a 4-film Ghoulies set that I got from Walmart a few years ago with the glow-in-the-dark cover on it. So I have all those films there, but it is here in this set here. But yeah, overall, this is probably my favorite in terms of content for this type of collection. So now let's move on to what is kind of my favorite packaging of any one of these films, and that's what we're going to talk about next. So this next set I'm going to talk about really doesn't fully fall into horror movies, I guess. It's more of like sci-fi with a little bit of horror and like monster movie, creature feature kind of stuff. But I want to include it here because I just want to show it off, because this is probably my favorite packaging of any one of these sets that I have. And the funny thing is, I got this for free. I actually got this from some people at work at my job. They were getting rid of a bunch of stuff from like their family's garage or whatever, and they had a big tote full of like VHS tapes and DVDs and stuff, and this was one of the items that was in there. I ended up taking like a whole bag full of like stuff from this kind of like box or tote that they had full of like movies and everything, and this was one of the items in there and something that I really wanted to pick up. So this is Classic Sci-Fi Ultimate Collection in a 2-disc set, and I just really love the packaging on this. This is a neon orange, pink, yellow kind of cover, slip cover that's on here, and both films are in dedicated boxes, kind of, you know, by themselves. So the way this works is it slides out and you have the real funky like color top on there, and then you have the 2 volumes of films in their own separate containers here. And I just love the packaging on this stuff. Like, this stuff is so cool, just with the colors, all the women screaming faces on the discs and stuff. I just really enjoy like how this looks. You know, this is just a really cool kind of like set on this stuff here. This was actually produced by Universal, so that probably explains why the packaging and everything is so much nicer. And this was produced back in 2008, so right around the time period of this other stuff. And so these movies, like I said, are sci-fi creature features. So it has Tarantula, the Mole People, Dr. Cyclops, the Incredible Shrinking Man, Monolith Monsters, the Leech Woman, the Deadly Mantis. You know, a lot of like that sort of stuff is on here. And like I said, this is just a really cool set for me. And I got this for free. Like I said, I got it from a kind of like a tote, a bin full of stuff that someone brought to my work that they were getting rid of. Even though I've been kind of an admitted person who doesn't care much about packaging, this one is actually pretty cool, and I really do like having this in my setup. So now we're going to move on to the very last big box collection for horror movies, at least. And this is the one I spent the most money on. This is the one I got from Record Exchange. And this is a 4-film horror movie pack that includes Pumpkinhead 2, Leprechaun, and the first 2 Wishmaster films. And the reason I picked this up was really just to see Pumpkinhead 2. I enjoy the first Pumpkinhead film. I actually have the special collector's edition. I believe it's from Shout Factory here in my collection for the original Pumpkinhead. But I wanted to see Pumpkinhead 2, and that one admittedly is not as good as the original. But I've also seen Leprechaun. I actually have the full 7 Leprechaun film set on Blu-ray, so I don't really watch it on this DVD. I have the Blu-ray set of everything for that. And the 2 Wishmaster films, I've watched the original Wishmaster. I haven't seen the sequel on here. And Wishmaster didn't really, I don't know, that one didn't really, play much with me. I didn't really get on too well with that. I thought it was all right, but nothing special. But I basically picked this up for Pumpkinhead 2. So what is also kind of interesting about this set versus all these other ones is that these are not dedicated DVDs for this set. This just takes the original DVDs from their single releases and just puts them together in this set. So you have the Pumpkinhead 2 DVD, the original Leprechaun release DVD, and then a 2-sided Wishmaster DVD in the back here. So they're not like these generic DVDs like all the other sets, or custom made ones like the sci-fi set here. And as much as I enjoy this, similar to my random hodgepodge kind of set, this one would probably be on the list of ones I would probably trade in or get rid of as well if I wanted to, just because none of these films really jump out that much to me. And for Leprechaun, which I do enjoy that film, I have the Blu-ray set of all the Leprechaun films, so I don't really need it here. But this is in my big box horror movie collection set that I do have here in my home theater. And with that, we are at the end of the video today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Hopefully, as I always say, this didn't run on too long. Hopefully I was able to kind of edit it down and keep it kind of short and sweet while touching on all these different collections. Let me know in the comments down below, not only some of your favorite films from these collections, but also let me know if there's any that I should be on the lookout for, when I'm out thrifting and just doing different stuff, online to see if I come across it. And let me know just kind of your thoughts on these big box collections in general, whether or not you guys have them in your collection at home, or if you kind of avoid these and just try and go get dedicated releases that are in better quality. Because like I said, some of these are pretty shoddy in the way they're actually formatted on the disc, and the quality is not very good. But for me, that's part of the appeal with some of this stuff, is watching these old school horror movies in like old school gritty quality with kind of rough picture and rough sound. It just kind of adds to the actual aesthetic. So with that, I'm done with the video here today. Thank you as always to everyone who's commented here on the videos, who's liked my videos, who's watched my videos, who's subscribed to the channel. I really do appreciate it. I'm on the push to get to 3,000 subs. I'm sure I'm going to get there here definitely by the end of the year, but hopefully maybe by the end of the month with the way things are going. I'm really looking forward to that. And with that, thanks again, and I will see you the next time in the next video right here on Secondhand Home Theater. And be on the lookout for more Halloween and horror themed content throughout the month of October. And I will see you then. Thank you.